everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be putting up a video discussing my pregnancies and kind of how labor went for me. If you are new here, please subscribe and hit that like button. But without any further ado, let's get down to it. So with my first daughter, Sienna, I found out that I was pregnant probably around April 19th, I think was the day that I actually found out and took a test, and it was positive. So I didn't have to work that day, but that night I went and I picked up my boyfriend from work, and the whole way there I was thinking, like, how am I going to tell him? How am I going to tell him? How am I going to tell him? Because we were in no good position to have a kid at that point in time. We were staying with a friend, and it was just a really small room, and we were just kind of making it on our own for a little bit, but adding a baby to it was definitely a lot at that time. But I was like, I don't even know how to tell him. So after I picked him up, we're driving home, and I'm still thinking in my head, how am I going to tell him? How am I going to tell him? How am I going to tell him? So I'm just kind of taking it word by word, trying to figure out if I can slip it in there somewhere. But at that point, we also used to smoke cigarettes. We don't anymore, but then at that point in time we did. And he was like, where are the cigarettes? I'm like, oh, they're right over there in the cup holder, but I should probably stop smoking cigarettes. Wink wink. And he looked at me and he goes, you're pregnant. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you're sure? I'm like, yeah, I took like 2 or 3 tests, and I took a digital one too. And he was like, I gotta tell my dad. That was the first thing he thought, is I gotta tell my dad. And then after he got out of the car, at some point in time he threw up thinking about it too much, and he was just really afraid to tell his dad. But his dad was pretty cool about it, and the rest of his family was pretty cool about it. But that was the kind of the beginning of our whole entire journey as a family. But it was just very exciting, very scary, I think at first, but super kind of excited, mostly to find out if it was a boy or a girl. But the first thing we had to do was get into a new place, because at that point in time we were staying with his friend, and we kind of weren't really in a good position for enough room for a baby or anything like that. So we went looking for apartments, and we found an apartment. So we moved into that new apartment, I think in May or June of that year. I was probably around 12 weeks pregnant. I remember we were looking for the apartment, and our landlord, who was really cool, and she was actually our neighbor too. I was talking to her, and I was like, yeah, I'm about 12 weeks pregnant. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, da da da. I'm like, yeah. And she was like, when's your due date? And get this, my due date was December 25th. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a Christmas baby, but I hope that she doesn't come on the 25th and then she gets her own day, because I know that I know a lot of people who have birthdays around that time, and they were like, I don't like my birthday, everybody's always going on vacation or to a family's houses or anything like that. So I was like, oh gosh, please either come early or come late, because it would not be fun to have a Christmas birthday. If you do like your Christmas birthday, that's wonderful. It's a good time of the year to have it. Double the presents. That's what Sienna got whenever she had her first birthday. She got double the presents. But as time, went on, my pregnancy progressed really, it was really easy. It was a pretty easy pregnancy. I think I only threw up a couple times. I didn't have much morning sickness. It was more nausea than anything. But yeah, as time went on, she was growing healthy, she was growing normally, and I think in August of that year we found out that it was a girl. Whenever we were in the ultrasound room, I was so convinced it was a boy. Like, I don't even know why, because my boyfriend has all boys in his family, so I was very convinced it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy. There's no way it's going to be a girl. And so she's in there, she's like, making sure everything looks good for the anatomy scan, and she's like, do you want to know what the gender is? And I'm like, yeah, just tell me, just rip off the band-aid and do it. And she was like, it's a girl. And I was like, what? I was so like shocked, and my boyfriend was looking at my face, and he's like, you look kind of disappointed. I'm like, no, I was just shocked, because I was just so 100% set that it was a boy, and I was having dreams that it was a boy and all this other stuff. So we yeah, it was a girl. It's crazy. I was super excited. All the little girl clothes and the bows and the cute little shoes and all that kind of stuff was just running through my mind whenever she told me. And then I was like, oh, now I gotta think of a name. And I really think naming is probably the hardest thing when it comes to babies, is naming the baby. And I was thinking, I'm like, what's a good girl name? And because my boyfriend's Indian, I was like, I don't want like a super hard name that you can't pronounce. I want something more modern. I don't want anything that's close to how my name is. Everybody and their mother has my name. My name's always been in the top 100 names for babies. And I just wanted, you know, her to have her own name, something a little bit unique that some people have, but not a lot. And it's funny because I actually thought of her name from a Kevin Gates song. If any of you guys know who Kevin Gates is, he's a rapper. But it was in the Breadwinners Association song. It's her name's Sienna. It was in the song, and I heard that name. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a really pretty name. I love that name. If I ever had a girl, I wanted to name her Sienna. And so I kept trying to like judge my boyfriend, like, we have to talk about names. We got to talk about names. We got to talk about names. And he was like, what names do you like? I'm like, I really like Sienna. I'm set on Sienna. But if you have a different name that you like, we can talk about it. And he was like, no, he's like, you can, Sienna's good, we'll go with Sienna. And there's kind of like an Indian version of that name as well. So her name was Sienna. And so as time kept going on, you know, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Everybody kept telling me, they're like, oh, you look really small, like, because I'm a skinny person. Like, if you look at me, I'm a thin girl. So I kept feeling like, I'm like, oh my god, I look like a whale, I look like a whale. But in retrospect, if you ever seen one of those memes about the seahorse, I look like a pregnant seahorse. Or like, I always joke, I was like, I look like one of those like bug creatures from Men in Black with the giant stomachs and the skinny bodies, because I literally, that's what I looked like. I was just like a stick with a giant belly. Didn't gain much weight. I think I gained a total of 36 pounds with Sienna, and then I lost it all very fast. So it was a pretty easy pregnancy, like I was saying. I mean, sleeping was a little bit harder. I'm a stomach sleeper, so sleeping on my stomach was very hard. I couldn't do it after about 14 weeks. And then I got a pregnancy pillow. One of my friends from work gave me a pregnancy pillow. That was seriously the most comfortable thing ever. I would come home and I'd catch my boyfriend sleeping with it, like sleeping in it. He's like, it's so comfortable, it's so I'm like, I know, it's like the most comfortable thing ever. So if you're pregnant right now and you don't have one and you're uncomfortable sleeping, get one. You will not regret it. I tell you, it is amazing. So amazing. But so sleeping was probably just the biggest problem for me. So once I started nearing my due date, feeling kicks, that was like really hard. It started to hurt. Everybody who's been pregnant, they know that once you get towards the end and the baby's really big and full grown, it hurts whenever they kick you. Sienna, she would always kind of kick me more towards my back, and it just wasn't comfortable. And I had a posterior placenta with Sienna. That's kind of a tongue twister. So yeah, she would kick me in the back, and you would think like, oh, you know, the placenta's in the way, so she'll just kick that. No, she was a strong baby. She was a very, very active baby. It's funny, I would sit on the couch and watch TV, and my boyfriend would look over and like look at my stomach, and it would just start moving around, and like he's like, that's really weird. I'm like, imagine living it with it in you, with the baby in you. She is very strong. I remember one time my boyfriend, he had his head on my stomach, and she kicked him in the back of the head as hard as she could. She did not like pressure on her. I couldn't wear like pants that were a little bit restricting. She would just constantly just kick, hit. I felt that all the time, even when I was sleeping. That's another reason why it was hard for me to sleep. Not only could I not lay on my stomach, she was kicking the crap out of me. But it was a very amazing feeling, though, to feel a life growing inside of you, and to know that very soon you're going to be taking on this role and being a very important part of this little baby's life. And once my due date started to roll around, on the 24th, I went to my parents' house for, Christmas Eve, and then Christmas went by, and the next day, I'm like, okay, I missed my due date. I'm like, I'm gonna be pregnant forever. I'm gonna be overdue. I'm going to need to be induced, yada, yada, yada. But on the 26th, I actually had to go get blood work done because I was anemic in both of my pregnancies, and I'm just don't produce a lot of iron. So they wanted to make sure my platelet levels were good. That way I could get an epidural or something like that. So I went and I got my blood work and I came back. I was driving back home, and I think there was one kick that I distinctly remember that was a little bit harder than usual. I was like, oh, that's really hard. So I'm like, still driving on my way home. And once I get into my apartment parking lot, I, park my car, turn it off. I stand up out of my car and I just feel like all this water just can't gush down. Luckily, I was wearing black pants or black leggings, so it wasn't super noticeable that it happened. And so I closed my door, locked my car, waddled inside. I'm trying to get upstairs, trying not to drip all over the floor. And so I get upstairs and I'm like, it just keeps coming out. I thought it was just one gush and done. No, it just keeps on coming and gushing. And they say only 20% of women, their water breaks. So it's not like you see in the movies where it's this big fiasco, oh my god, the baby's coming, da da da. You have time. So I'm I go and I plant my butt on the toilet because it would just keep gushing and not come, it wouldn't stop. So I was scared to put a pad on because I didn't know if it was going to leak through the pad or not. So I waited until I was getting ready to leave to put a pad on. So I'm sitting on the toilet. I call my doctor and I let them know that my water broke and if I should go in, and they said, oh yeah, come in, it's baby time. And so then I called my boyfriend. He was at work and he was kind of doing the whole frantic, oh my gosh, da da da. So I'm packing everything up and then I come out, get in the car, and we're going on our way to the hospital. And then I didn't start feeling contractions at this point at all. So we're driving and we get to the hospital. They get me into triage and then they check me to see how dilated I was. And then at that point I was about, I think she said 2.5 centimeters dilated. 1 second. Sorry y'all, baby was calling. Anyways, so yeah, I was about 2 to 2.5 centimeters dilated. And then I started feeling contractions. And man, let me tell you, contractions are no joke. I'm sitting there and they're like, oh, breathe through the contractions. It's impossible to breathe through these contractions because it kind of felt like it was making them worse. So I'm sitting there, I'm I would hold my breath and I would grip the bed as hard as I could because I just wanted, I was would just tense up everything. And they say oh, don't tense, be relaxed, da da da. I was doing the complete opposite, but it was working for me. So I just kept doing it. So I'm oh. So then they checked me again and they're you're about 5 centimeters. And I was in triage for about 3 hours going through contractions before they moved me to a room because I think that room that I was supposed to be in wasn't ready yet. So we get into our room and then I get my epidural. Epidural wasn't bad. Let me tell you, everyone who says oh, it was painful, da da da, for me it wasn't. I mean, the Novocaine or the whatever, the shot that they give you to numb up your back, that was the worst part of it. I didn't feel when they were putting the tube in, nothing. And so then I'm laying there and I kept feeling contractions in my stomach, and that's where all the cramping was coming from. It wasn't I couldn't feel my legs, I couldn't feel my pelvis or anything. It was just above my stomach where I could just feel, excuse me, all the contractions just tightening and cramping, excuse me. Oh, but that was it was horrible. So the anesthesiologist had to come back in and give me even more medicine. And so I was super numb after 30 minutes of getting the second dose of medicine. I was so numb. It was ridiculous. I was just so numb. I couldn't move anything. I could only move my arms and a little bit of my my upper body. And so I was so uncomfortable. I kept having my mom and my boyfriend kept flipping me over from side to side to side to side because I was just so uncomfortable. But I couldn't feel anything. It was just the way my body was laying was uncomfortable. It was just kind of weird. It was a really weird feeling, not feeling anything. second time. Hold on. I ended up getting a cookie. Anyways, so one of the last times that they went to flip me over, it was my boyfriend Harjo. He flipped me over, and as he was flipping me over, he was like, "What's that?" Side note, before that, they told me if I feel a lot of pressure down there, that means her head's coming down. I didn't feel nothing. When they gave me that second dose of medicine, I was so numb, I couldn't even feel her head coming down. Like, it just worked so well. So I couldn't tell her head was starting to come out. But he flipped me, and he saw it, and the nurse was like, "Oh my God, she's ready to deliver this baby." And Harjo was like, "What?" He's like, "In here?" And they were like, "Yeah, in here." So it's all like happening so fast. And mind you, it took me, it was only 8 hours of labor. That's all it was. From like the time my water broke at 2:40 to the time I had her was 8 hours. And so they're like getting everything ready and, you know, putting up like the stirrups for my feet and stuff. And they're like, "Use your dead weight against you." So my legs were so dead. I'm trying to like pick up my legs, and your legs are heavy. Like, if you think about it, it's like half your body. So it's like half your body weight, and I have to like hold on to my legs, and they're so heavy. But I'm weak too, so I'm holding my legs, and they're like, "Use the pressure against you to help you push." And they're like, "Push like you're doing a bowel movement." So I'm like pushing, and I'm like, "Please God, don't poop." Please don't poop. You know, they like say some people, they like go to the bathroom whenever they're pushing the baby out. Thankfully, I did not. Both times, I did not. So, but I'm pushing, and I only pushed through 2 contractions, and she came right out. And she's crying, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I have a baby now. This is crazy." I'm looking at her, and I mean, she's covered in all that goo and stuff, but it was just like such a good feeling to have done it, you know? Like, I did it. Like, I gave birth to a human. Like, it's no joke. It was kind of like all a blur because it just happened so fast. I didn't think it was gonna happen that fast, but it happened so fast. But so after that, like, they checked her temperature, and they're like, "Oh, her body temperature is a little bit below what we would like." So then they had her in like the little sun lamp thing, and I'm like all dead weight, so I'm like just laying there like looking around like, okay, what's next? And then they wrapped her up for me after her temperature went back to normal, and then they moved us into our room to our recovery room. Hi, baby. Are you not sleepy anymore? You want to come up here? Come here. That was not a long nap at all. Look at my little monkey. Say hi. You say hi. Okay. But as I was saying, yeah, they moved us into our recovery room, and then we're just like, you know, I was just trying to figure out breastfeeding and all that stuff. And I didn't know, like, I did no research. I'm usually a really researching kind of person, but I did no research on what to expect whenever, like, you're going to go breastfeed. I didn't do any classes either. I know, shame on me, but I didn't do any classes or anything either. I was just working a lot before I ended up having her, so I didn't get around to doing any of that stuff. But I mean, it all worked out fine. Everything's fine. She's fine. I'm fine. And so I'm trying to like breastfeed her, and like it wasn't working. Like, she just kept crying like she was hungry. She was hungry, and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, this isn't working. She isn't latching right. Like, nothing really, not a lot is coming out. And so one of my like night nurses, I'm like trying to feed her at night, and I'm like crying because she won't stop crying, and I'm just getting so frustrated and like so upset because she's crying so much, and I'm like, I can't do this, like, this isn't working for me. I'm just trying to like bounce her and try to get her to go to sleep. And the nurse came in, and she's like, you know, you can give her formula, right? I was like, what? Nobody told me that. And so she brought me in all this formula, and like finally she stopped crying after like 2.5 hours of her crying. She finally stopped crying, and the next couple of days went really well. Whenever we were at the hospital, she passed her hearing test and all that stuff. So they let us go home, and we went home and we started our lives together. Right, Sienna? You say yes? Yeah. So that was Sienna's first story. I feel like this is gonna be too long, so I might have to like break them both up into 2 videos. But that was Sienna's first story. Now she is 16 months old, and she is getting big. Huh? You say hi. You say hi. Do you love mommy? Do you love mommy? She doesn't love me. Where's your nose? Nose. Where are your eyes? Eyes. Where are your eyes? Good job. Where is your mouth? Where's your mouth? Where's your mouth? Where's your mouth? And where are your ears? Where's your ear? Where's your ear? Where's your ear? Where's your ear? No, you can't have my phone. Ow, ow, ow. All right. Well, that is it for this video. Like I said, I'm gonna do Harley's video next, and I'll put that up the next time I go to upload. So I will see you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Peace.